Thanks, Goomsong. Appreciate it. Well, good morning again. And it is a good morning to be here, I must confess. A week ago, yesterday, my former wife, Myo-sung Karen, conducted a cremains burial service for her brother, Johnny Supa, at Troy White Chapel. And a few of her cousins came into town for it, and a couple of their friends and her husband was there. And Johnny was about 22 years younger than I was, and raised in a household with his sister that was chaotic, to say the least. That was alcoholic. That was the father abusive emotionally and physically with the children. And in fact, my wife Karen was, I forget what they call that term, but where you relieve yourself of being a child of parents. And at 15, she became independent and through a counselor was moved into an apartment and found a job and felt terrible because she had to leave her brother at home in the face of this nightmare. And Johnny was a real loving soul. And when we had our son Kaiden, he came over here a lot. And he lived up in Traverse City, so he didn't hang around here much. But he'd make trips down here to visit his nephew. And but he was a really fractured soul. And he was constantly throughout his life looking for the pieces of his life through the bottom of a whiskey bottle. And never could arrange those pieces properly. His favorite band was Led Zeppelin. And his favorite song was Stairway to Heaven. And Johnny himself was always trying to walk up that stairway to heaven to find redemption. And he'd walk up one rung and fall back two, and never made it to the top of that stairway. And he died earlier this year, and Myo-sung just decided to bury his cremains 8 days ago. So it's with that kind of heart I walk into today's talk. When you're dealing with cancer, there's all types of cancers and there's all degrees of cancers, and it all depends on who you are as an individual. And so when I walked into my cancer diagnosis, it wasn't unexpected. And it wasn't unexpected that it was going to be aggressive and malignant. Why not me? I mean, I'm nothing special. Why shouldn't it be me as opposed to anyone else? And so you start to acclimate to, I'll be damned, I know what I might die of. Hopefully I've got a year or two, but I know what I might die of. It's metastasized, but hopefully we can get it all, at least for a while, to keep it at bay. And then when my oncologist nurse decided, because I wasn't feeling well, and decided to run a couple of kidney function tests on me while she was running a PSA, which is a prostate-specific antigen that men have, and it increases when you have prostate cancer. Thank God she did, because I got it at home that night on my chart, and it was 5.4, and my BUN was like 88, but that was some dehydration. Being a veterinarian for 55 years, a little bit about human medicine. It is applicable to animals too. So, and vice versa, animals to people. So I knew I was in trouble. And I went into for my radiation therapy the next day at Troy Beaumont. And after I was done, I told my nurse, I said, I don't know if you saw the value yet. She said, no. I said, here it is. And she says, oh my God. And I said, yeah. I said, like, this is not good. And she called up the emergency department and talked with the physician, who was a woman physician who was in charge of emergency that morning. And she said, get him down here pronto. We got to admit him. And then I stayed there for 9 more days. And the funny thing is, it was as if I was being set free. People are doing this blood and kind of freaking out a little bit about the blood values. And they're talking about them in front of me as these different doctors. The kidney doctors are in there, and the nurses, and this emergency room physician. And as they're talking about it, they're coming through my chart. So I'm just looking at this stuff in real time, what it is. And I'm like, yep, I kind of agree with you. I kind of agree with you. And then my family doctor happened to be in the hospital that day. And so he ended up visiting. He's an internal medicine guy. And so he ended up visiting me every day that I was in the hospital and debating with these nephrologists, these kidney doctors. And it's kind of fascinating just sitting back and it's like, you know what? I thought I was going to die of cancer. I damn well might die of acute kidney disease. Because if this isn't treated, I don't have a whole bunch of time. If I were to stop treatment today, in a couple of weeks, I'd be gone. You can't go without having your blood cleaned. It doesn't happen. And yet it wasn't frightening. I'm not scared to die. I have done everything that I ever thought I might do in life. I've enjoyed most of it. I've learned from a lot of it. And when it comes, it comes. So I had this really different attitude. And while I was in the hospital, my song began, knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. Bob Dylan, knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. And I'm like, every day, man, I am knocking on heaven's door. Very literally. St. Peter, are you hearing it? I'm a-coming. Hopefully I've got a little bit of time, but I'm a-coming. And if this doesn't get done correctly, I'll be knocking real soon. So it was quite the ordeal. And when I was first admitted by an administrative person, she came up, they get basic paper information and whatnot. She said, listen, sir, would you like me to send a chaplain to your room? And I said, I think I can do without. She kind of looked at me. And I said, I'm a Buddhist monk, actually. I said, I've been a monk for 20 years. And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess that, okay, yeah, you don't need a chaplain then. I said, no, I think I'll be fine. I said, I got things I want to work through here. So it got out that people would walk in, the food preparers who were deliverers would walk in there, and they'd see my Buddhist book I got laying there and my little statue I got there. And they'd see my mala beads on, and they'd see the guy in the red vest. I became known as the guy in the red vest throughout the hospital because I never took it off, except when I had the hot sweats at night, and it literally got drenched. My down vest got drenched. And I had to take it off and dry it for a couple of hours and then wrap up in a whole bunch of blankets to stay warm. So I became known as this guy who was a Buddhist monk. And it was really fascinating because you have no idea the freedom that I felt in being who I truly am, not trying to prove anything to anybody, but just being me, Gary, a Buddhist monk who knows what it is that will probably kill him. It's like, wow, I can just be who I am. And so people would come in there and they'd ask me questions. And these kids who are transporters, they start talking with me and ask me about Buddhism. And I'd say, man, go to Wikipedia. It's just too exhaustive. I don't feel like talking about that now. I don't feel well. I really don't feel well. I feel sickly. But go to Wikipedia. And I had a couple of nurses who made it known that they knew who I had learned who I was and wanted just a little bit of counsel with a couple of family situations. I had an Indian woman who came in who was administrative, And I forget what it was that she was, but it was something new, administrative. And she says, I see you wearing a mala. And she said, I see you've got a Buddhist book there next to you. And I said, yeah. And she said, are you Buddhist? And I said, yeah, I'm a monk. And she says, oh my, really? And I said, yeah. And so then I told her about our Chando, Raji, how, who hasn't been here in a little bit, but how Chando and her husband went back to India for 6 months last fall and had just recently taken the precepts and formally become Buddhist. And they had visited the 4 holy sites of the Buddha while in India and Nepal. And she says, oh my, she says, I'm going to ask you something. She said, please, please, please give me a blessing. And so we stood up and I just put my hands on her head, and there's a particular mantra. If anyone's interested, you can look it up in Sanskrit. It's called the mantra of light, or Vairocana's mantra of light. And it's chanted 3 times in Sanskrit, and then it's got different English translations. I just very briefly gave her the English translation. And and she was so honored, tears started running down her eyes. And she said, you have no idea what this means to me. And she bowed deeply and walked out. And it's like, wow, here I am sickly with something that's probably going to kill me eventually. And all of these blessings are just unfolding. And it was just amazing. And my roommate, Bruce, who went to dialysis like me, Bruce, who was a not so watchful diabetic, and Bruce, who was having gangrene on one of his fingers and are trying to debate whether to save it or amputate it, and Bruce, who was single, and Bruce, who ate every damn thing that was on the menu, and I couldn't believe it, being diabetic, and his frickin' blood sugar would be like 250, and I'm like, oh my God, why are they letting him eat that food? And Bruce, who was like, scream anytime they touch him with a needle. And after 2 days, I got, well, I've only told the story to one person, to Yamye so far. And so they'd come in to take blood. They got to take a lot of blood because of infection, and they're monitoring his antibiotic levels and just everything, vancomycin. And so and he said, for God's sakes, and he'd call every sacred name under the sun and tell them what they could do, what that name could do with this person right here. And, to F off, leave me GD alone. And I'd start laughing so hard because to me it was funny. It's like, oh my God. I was thinking, we've got this saying, Bruce, pain is a given, but suffering is optional. And you're creating all of this damn suffering for yourself. So one morning I walk over there after he had cursed out the phlebotomist who had come and gotten all his blood again and had missed a couple of times and had to do it again. And I'd started laughing again. I said, Bruce, you got to forgive me. I said, forgive me for laughing. But I said, I'm a Buddhist. I said, you probably learned that from people coming in and out of here already. And I said, this is what we believe. Pain's a given. It hurts when I get the needle too. But I just stop it right there. That's the end of it. I don't build this big story up about how it's going up to my brain and oh my God, and it's going to kill me, and you're cursing these poor people out that it's not their fault that they're missing the vein. You've got crazy ass veins here. You don't have any good veins here because of what's going on in your bloodstream. And I'll be damned. A few hours later, the technician came in to get blood from him, and he was completely quiet the entire time. The entire time. He said, boo. And for most days thereafter, there's a couple of times when he gave a little bit of, oh, that hurts. But that was it. He shut up. And it was like, I'll be damned, these teachings work. they really work. You can help someone along the way, And so it turned out to be quite the thing. I want to tell you, when I went in for, I wasn't challenged much, but really I was only really seriously challenged about being a Buddhist and not believing in God one time by a 60-some-year-old administrative woman. I was going in to have my central venous catheter surgically placed here. And so she's getting all the paperwork. Well, her name was Angela. In fact, my nurse's name was Angela. Well, Angela, the RN, was doing all the prep work and getting me ready. And so Angela, the administrative person, says, what kind of beads are those? I said, it's called a Buddhist rosary or a Buddhist mala. I said, I use them for chanting and tracking chants and whatnot. So you're Buddhist, huh? I said, yeah. So she asked me a little bit about it, and she said, so you don't believe in God, huh? Yeah, I knew it was coming. Somebody in that hospital had to do it, and she was the one who did it. So you don't believe in God. So Buddhism isn't a religion, it's a philosophy, right? I said, Buddhism is the fourth largest religion. But Gary, it can't be a religion because you don't believe in God. So I tried to explain to her how Buddhism is non-theistic. We don't say whether or not God exists or not. We don't talk about a transcendent or an immanent God there, here. We don't talk about a personal force or some sort of personality that touches us. We don't talk about a presence in life, or is it a character in literature? We don't talk about a God who maybe made us, or us who maybe made God. We talk about suffering. And the primal question that was ever asked way back at the beginning of humankind is when the first human cried out for help. Help! When they realized they needed more. They needed the inanimate forces that surrounded them. They needed something to help move on with their lives. And that's where religion began. Whether or not God exists, we each have our own ideas, and I certainly have my own ideas. So I tried to explain to Angela, the administrative woman, that this is, and she wasn't convinced. She wasn't convinced. And, she said, well, we'll go our own way and, we'll just believe what we believe. So my practice the entire time, I had my nighttime prayer practice that I always have, the Medicine Buddha practice. And I did my Quanum, Hail Quanum practice many days. But my continuous practice, I only had the TV on a couple of times when the Tigers games were on. And then it turns out I had visitors during those games and they lost anyhow. So it wasn't very worthwhile. But the only time I had the TV on was the one then. But was Om Mani Padme Hum. Used primarily in Tibetan Buddhism, but also used heavily in East Asian Buddhism, especially China and Vietnam. We use it in Korea too. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om, setting yourself right with the resonance of the cosmos, the frequency of everything that is. Om. Mani. Mani simply means jewel. Sintamani, Cintimani is the Sanskrit word shortened to Mani, Mani. The jewel. What's the jewel? The Buddha within each of us. The Bodhisattva within each of us. That spiritual aspect of us, which is capable of responding to our kleshas, blowing away those clouds that fog up everything, that cloud up our inner light, in responding with awakening, sitting in the base of the lotus. Look at the lotus that the Bodhisattva sits on there. Look at the lotus, the bed of lotuses that the Buddha sits on there. Look at the lotus that the Bodhi sits on up on there. And in the statue down there, the medicine, all sitting on a base of lotuses. We are all, whether we believe it or not, rooted in awakening. It's up to us to do the practice. So everything that I saw or heard they've got these baby chimes going off all the time. Man, it's amazing the number of babies that are born there every day at that hospital. All of a sudden, for about 10 seconds, there are chimes going off. So every day when it is, Om Mani Padme Hum, for the new baby coming into this life, that it be a good life for them, for the mother and the father. Om Mani Padme Hum, for people that I'd be hollering out in other rooms who were in pain. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, for the nurses who were asking for help, a little bit of counsel from me. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. I am developing my own awakening, manifesting my own awakening, and hopefully helping others with theirs. Om Mani Padme Hum. This practice works, but you got to do it. I have been in touch through my journey, starting with cancer, with one of our former members, Dr. Adam Skrinsky. Went to Wayne State. Many of you, not many of you, but some of you know who he is. Went to Wayne State Undergraduate University, as did his brother. Went to Wayne State Medical School, and while he was going to Wayne State Medical School, had a lot of family problems, and started coming here because a friend of his recommended meditation, and took our meditation class and became involved with everything here. Was at services all the time, would come on Thursday nights, would counsel with me independently. Retreats, he was here. He was one hell of an active member. And through his practice, applying the principles of Buddha Dharma, he finished Wayne State, he finished medical school, and he got an internship at Royal Oak Beaumont. He did a residency there in internal medicine. He took a postdoctoral in infectious diseases and met his wife, also a physician. They live in New Jersey, have 3 beautiful young daughters now, and is studying to, has actually started rabbinical studies in humanistic Judaism, and has been in touch with me all along the way. He's helped me find, I've got to have my pancreas checked out because I got some stuff going on there in a couple of weeks, and he helped me find a doctor for that. And nearly every day touches me on Facebook or a email or a text message. And just sent me a couple of books on humanistic Judaism because I'm so proud of him, of what he's doing. We had, years ago, I had the former supervising pastor of Detroit Medical Center. He was head of pastoral care for all the hospitals. He was also my supervising pastor when I was a student pastor for a year. Come in here and give a talk to clergy, Dharma students, and I invited Adam, Dr. Skrinsky now, because I saw in him the potential for doing something similar way down the road. And lo and behold, he's looking very highly at going for ordination as a rabbi in humanistic Judaism and also practicing human medicine and what he's doing. Blessings abound. Got to do the work. That's the challenging part. A lot of people come here and they want somebody to do it for them. You got to suffer through it. The suffering, you got to suffer through it to find healing and redemption on the other end. Thank you. May blessings abound for each one of us.